Free agency turned the league upside down, and with the draft around the corner, we're going to do the impossible. Way too early NFL power rankings. Let's get into it. Now, the easiest way to explain how we did this video was we all ranked the 32 teams in the 5 different tiers. We used the point system, we found a collective average, and that is the list you guys will see in today's episode. But we're not going to make you wait. We're going to start with the top dogs, the Super Bowl contenders. But before we get there, Amir, of course, is back joining the show. How you doing? Are you ready to talk about the Rams and the Seahawks again?
I'm doing good, and these are two teams I really want to talk about. I think what's the most interesting between these two teams is talking about Seattle. This is going to be a great discussion.
Yeah, we'll start there with the reigning Super Bowl champions as they've lost a couple big pieces, like Boye Mafe on the defensive line. They lost some secondary pieces like Tariq Woolen and Kobe Bryant on the back end. They also lost the Super Bowl MVP and Ken Walker. So, Amir, I ask you, that paired with losing your offensive coordinator in Clint Kubiak, how much I guess decline do you see the Seattle team taking as a whole? Because obviously we still both have them as Super Bowl contenders given the rest of their staff.
So I think for Seattle, they're still set up for the future, right? They still have a bunch of cap space. They still have a bunch of draft picks. They still have a lot of wiggle room to work with. But based off next season, what's concerning to me is the Rams and both the Niners. They both got wildly better, especially San Fran. I mean, San Fran, you lose solid, but offensively, I mean, you bring in Mike Evans and you bring in Christian Kirk, whereas Seattle, you lose Ken Walker, which is a major loss. And so now Charbonnet is going to come the next season hurt. Now you got to panic and find a good running back. And I think last year they benefited off of having Kubiak. I mean, because we all watched Seattle last season and watching them offensively, we were more so watching the mastermind of Kubiak. Like
Yeah.
I thought they sort of exceeded expectations offensively, and it's going to be concerning with me going into this season where Darnold already has issues with turning the ball over. So now he's going to get a brand new system. His starting running back is gone. His backup running back is also going to be gone, and the offensive line still wasn't really that great last season. And so I'm a bit concerned. They're in my contenders, but they're towards the bottom of my contenders.
Yeah, I think the foundation of this team is still there. They want to dominate in the trenches like they did all of last season, and they're returning pretty much all of those players. And if, hey, Amir, if they can get playoff level Sam Darnold for an entire season, we're going to look past these losses very quickly because Sam Darnold was playing like a top 10 quarterback in the league down the stretch. But I want to talk about the LA Rams for a sec. I talked about this on the draft channel as they, of course, this offseason, they've been busy. They traded for Trent McDuffie. They signed Jalen Watson, both corners there coming over from Kansas City. They also re-signed Cameron Curl. So for a team that had secondary issues as their lone, I guess, bad spot last year on the roster, they fixed it in such a dramatic way. This reminds me of their last Super Bowl push when they got Matthew Stafford, when they had a complete roster but just got better, and they were so aggressive in bringing in Jalen Ramsey and bringing in Odell Beckham. This is a team that I think is really going all in. Now, Amir, of course, we know they're going all in. They have the 13th pick in this upcoming NFL draft, which, by the way, don't be shocked if they just say F it and draft Jordan Tyson. Even though they don't need a receiver, don't be shocked, man. With his injury history, he might fall down the board. Same with Carnell Tate. So don't be shocked if they just say, we're going to give Stafford as much help as possible to really just dominate teams across this conference. But going back to their last Super Bowl, Sean McVay contemplated retirement. He is such a young coach. We know he's been in the league for a long time, but he also has a young family. Amir, I want to propose this to you. Do you think that if the LA Rams continue to be this aggressive, continue to go out there and dominate the way that we think they should and win next Super Bowl, how much of a chance do you think there is that Sean McVay actually retires there with Matthew Stafford?
I'm not sure if he retires. And, I think we talked about this like 2 years ago, like the same kind of discourse. And I know there's been reports saying he wants to be with his family. He wants to, retire. But I just think he's a guy that's so obsessed with the game, and he still has so much more to pour into the game. He can still solidify himself even more as a Hall of Fame head coach. I just don't see him retiring, man, especially for the Rams. I mean, they could be set for the future. Like, if they
Yeah.
were to even draft a quarterback, I mean, like, imagine if they draft, like, Ty Simpson, later in this draft, have him sit behind Stafford. I think they could set a foundation for the future, and I think it's going to be too good of an opportunity to pass up.
And for that sense, I agree. But look, and I'll say this, Rams fans, don't panic. He is my favorite coach, if not my second favorite coach of all time. So I don't want to see him go, but I do think there's potentially a chance there that if Matthew Stafford goes, he doesn't want to go through this process again. Take a year or two, sit at home with your family, and then come back to the right opportunity. I'm not saying it's impossible, and I'll leave it at that. Now, the Chicago Bears are the last team in the NFC that we have as Super Bowl contenders. And let me clarify, I have them as Super Bowl contenders. Amir's not there yet, so
You.
I'm going to try and sell you. Look, this is a team that started off this offseason on the wrong foot. They had to cut Tremont Edmonds for cap reasons. They had their starting center retire, who signed a big contract last offseason. And then they had to trade longtime number one wide receiver in DJ Moore to the Buffalo Bills. But I think they've rebounded in such a great way, and they still have great draft picks to add to this roster. You brought in Bradbury, center there from the New England Patriots, a guy that just made a Super Bowl run. He's incredibly smart, been a long time trusty veteran. You brought in Devin Bush, guy that had a career season with the Browns last year. Kobe Bryant on the back end to generate some more turnovers. And Braxton Jones re-signs there to reinforce the blind side for Caleb Williams. Amir, I think that when you look at this NFC conference outside of the LA Rams, it is wide open. And when you have a coach like Ben Johnson that is going to be aggressive, I think he's still going to maybe sign a big free agent or two, whether if it's before or after the draft. I do think he's going to get aggressive in the draft, whether if that's adding defensive line help or what have you. They're, to me, last year was huge for them as far as building a foundation and setting the culture of this organization going forward. I think Ben Johnson successfully did that. They brought back all of their staff. The players, for the large part, is coming back. And this could be a big year for Luther Burden and Rome Odunze to solidify themselves as one of the league's best outside threats. Amir, I give the floor to you. Am I being overzealous thinking that Caleb Williams, with his potential, can take that next Patrick Mahomes jump and really lead this team to really contention status?
So, I don't want to sound cliche, but that's all where it rests right there. It's literally all based off Caleb Williams. If he has like an MVP caliber season where he's up in those conversations,
I
being
think he
like a top
can.
five candidate, I think he can too. I think he's a legit candidate. And, I was extremely high on him coming out the draft. I was extremely high on him since high school when he was playing football in Maryland. And I think he honestly can. My biggest concern is last year, as good as they were, there were a lot of moments where you were watching them thinking, are they even truly contenders? And I thought the only reason why they almost beat the Rams at home was because the Rams are kind of in such of a low spot as a team where they almost caught them slacking. Now, this year, I agree with you. I think Ben Johnson set the foundation for what we should expect from this team this season.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to start off as slow. I mean, they won't start the season off getting absolutely blown out by Detroit by like 30 to start the season off. They're going to start the season off on fire, hot. And I also think, too, in a division where Green Bay and Detroit are both getting worse,
Yeah.
I think it's a perfect opportunity for them to really just start off hot and be really good. But I
Amir,
have them in my competitive playoff teams here. But I would say you just mentioned it. This draft is going to mean a lot to me, so I'm really curious to see how this draft goes.
yeah. What if they want to add like a Lee Hunter there or Caleb Banks, right? Someone that can really solidify this defensive front. Because as we've seen with recent Super Bowl champions, if you have a dominant defensive front that can cover any other flaws that you may have on your roster, a great quarterback also helps. But Chicago, for me, is a contender. Amir, they're just outside the contention status. Moving to the AFC, I have the Denver Broncos. Now, I want to clarify. Amir and I talked about this before the show. I had them as a contender before the recent Jalen Waddle trade, and the recent trade only solidified for this for me. When I look at the AFC, we had a team in the New England Patriots that people were debating, are they even going to make the playoffs last year? They went to the Super Bowl. So this AFC goes to show you it's wide open. Sure, there's great quarterbacks like Lamar, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, but whether if they're coming off an injury or their organization struggle to build a roster around that position, I'm just not sold that any of those teams did enough to bump them into this tier for me. And when I look at the Broncos, Amir, like I mentioned with Sean McVay, if it's not Sean McVay, it's Sean Payton. That's my favorite coach of all time. And what does he do better than 99% of coaches? Draft well at the end of the first round and develop talent. He's had so many great draft classes. And though they just traded away their late first, I think I trust Sean McVay to find gems down the board like he's always done and continue to build this roster. I mean, Bo Nix had this team in the AFC title game last year, getting a huge win over Josh Allen, though there were some controversies. Um, he protects the football. They generate turnovers. And again, I trust their coach and this well built roster. Outside of losing a defensive tackle, they're bringing back the entire team and they have more confidence than ever. Amir, your thoughts on Denver and their potential to be the front runner in the AFC this year?
This is not a crazy take, and it's actually to mention I had them right at the top in the number one spot in my competitive playoff teams. And I just sat and I was thinking, like, is this team a legit contender? Because I think they really can be. And then boom, the Jalen Waddle news comes out, and I just want to say this: Jalen Waddle, he's in the top 10 receiver, probably not even a top 15 receiver, and he's been hurt the past 2 years. But this is really all they need to really put them over the edge to where I think they could beat any one of these teams in the league. And
Sure.
I think defensively alone, they're going to be elite. We already know that, with or without Jim Leonard. And offensively, Bo Nix, he's still a good enough quarterback to protect the football, play good. Cortland Sutton, Jalen Waddle, RJ Harvey, he should have an even better season next year. The offensive line is great. I just think this is a perfect spot for them to really dominate. And two, I mean, the AFC West should be even worse this season. So I think this is a perfect spot for them to come out and win like 13 games.
Yeah, I mean, best home field in football. That goes without saying there with Mile High. This is going to be the funnest team for me to watch next season because I love Cortland Sutton out of SMU. I love Jalen Waddle there, especially early in his career. I would like to see them, Amir, draft a running back. I'm not sold on J.K.
Yeah.
Dobbins coming off this injury again, or R.J. Harvey being a lead running back. Sean Payton needs that lead guy, but you also have guys like Pat Bryant, who's one of my favorite underrated gems in last year's class, really shined at the end of last season. This is a team that has a lot of my guys, and I'm going to be
Yeah.
excited to watch them outside of my Browns. And
Yeah. And
then finally, go ahead.
I also too, I was really looking forward to seeing them sign Isaiah Likely. I mean, because if they would have got a really good tight end, even better, I would have been excited to see that.
It's
But
a
he went
deep
to New York
class.
instead.
Like they could still get like an
Yeah.
Eli Stowers in the second round
Hmm.
if they wanted to go that way. For Buffalo, Amir, you were not originally a big fan of the Joe Brady hiring, but hey, I think if anything, he's done a better job already as far as giving Josh Allen the most help possible on the offensive side of the ball. This team lost David Andrews this offseason, but they replaced him with McGovern there. He's been a longtime center for Josh Allen, so re-signing him was pretty big. They also made a big time trade for DJ Moore, giving Josh Allen yet again a number one wide receiver. Amir, sell me because I'm not there yet with the Buffalo Bills, as crazy as they may sound. Sell me on why you think they are Super Bowl contenders.
So I was really concerned, right? I thought, like, to be completely honest, I thought their whole entire off-season process when it comes to looking for coaches, I thought it was pretty lazy. Like, I seriously was looking at them, and they didn't really interview any of these top hitting guys. And it's like, once they did, they just hurried up and hired Joe Brady, and I was extremely concerned. And I know you're a bit higher on Brady than I am. I think as good as he is, I would have been happy to see them just bring an entire new face in, an entire new offensive mastermind. But I'm really happy with what they're doing with the staff now. I mean, they bring in Jim Leonard from Denver. It's about time you bring in just somebody that can just handle the defense, a great defensive mastermind. And on top of that, too, you bring in Pete Carmichael, where we know for him, he's been with Sean Payton in these elite top three, top one offenses with Breeze, in those prime Saints years. And I just like the signings as well. I mean, I think you bring in Bradley Chubb. Obviously, he's not
Oh, I forgot
elite,
about
but
him.
still, I mean, that's a great piece to have. You're bringing D. Alford. He's going to be a great fit. Under Jim Leonard to play in the slot and play nickel. C.J. Gardner Johnson. He's better than any DB they've had in a while. And I mean, I just think they're in a position where with DJ Moore as well, where they have Josh Allen, they have a new stadium, which is going to be huge, brand new home field advantage, new faces in the facility. I could just see a new culture being built up there. And I'm just excited to see what they do. The only thing that's kind of going to be concerned to me is I hope that they can get another steady backup running back because I do not want to see a situation where we watched Philly this past season where You go from feeding Saquon the ball 250 times to then go ahead and just feed him the ball 250 more times this season, and he kind of slows down. So
Yeah.
they're gonna manage James Cook this year.
Yeah, maybe they bring back his brother, though he's been retired for like 5 years at this point. Hey, Joe Mixon's on the market. He's looking for a job, and he wants to compete. Maybe that's the call that Buffalo and Joe Brady like to make. But to your point, Amir, to clarify, I think we were both in the Brian Daboll to Buffalo train.
Yeah.
I would have preferred him to be hired as the head coach over Joe Brady, but I digress. Let's go to the next tier. Super Bowl contenders is obvious, but now we want to look at the competitive playoff teams tier, and simply we looked at this tier as we feel really confident that they can win at least one playoff game and potentially many more to compete for this conference. We'll start with Baltimore. Um, I'm not as high on Baltimore as Amir, and I'll leave it at that. I think I had them in the tier below this because they were one of my losers in the free agency period and cycle this year. Outside of bringing in Trey Hendrickson, which I don't really think elevates a defense because you lost Jermon Jones, so it's not like this guy has a running mate. You also have Matabike dealing with health issues. He might have to retire from the game of football. You lost Tyler Linderbaum in chase of this Max Crosby trade. You lost Charlie Kolar, Isaiah Likely. This is a new regime under Jesse Minter, and he's going to have his work cut out for him. But so far, he has not made the job easier for Lamar Jackson. We still have a long offseason to go, but again, I think they have a lot of work to do because I think that's the whole point of getting rid of John Harbaugh, Amir, is to make the job easier for your franchise quarterback. And I just haven't seen anything that has told me that's happened so far. Your thoughts on the Ravens and why you have them as Super Bowl contenders? I guess it makes sense because it is a wide open conference.
And I would say this about Harbaugh. I think it was too many fingers being pointed at him because, in my opinion, and we're both big on this, Lamar did not make his job any easier at all. And I think it was mutual. I think they could have benefited off giving him, obviously more help offensively, but still, in games where he's supposed to at least play decent, he completely crumbled and did not look good at all. And I just think now, I agree with you from the standpoint of offensively, they still haven't really done much to really help him at all. I think they still have to bolster up the offensive line a bit. I think they got to find a more consistent backup running back, just in case if it's another season where Derrick Henry, you see like a huge decline to start the season off. Also, too, losing Isaiah Likely is a huge loss.
Yeah.
I would have been more comfortable with going ahead and letting Mark Andrews walk and letting Isaiah Likely be full-time tight end because I think he's easy a top 10 tight end. He hasn't been utilized.
Wow.
And I just think they're going to be in that contender tier. I think they're going to win the AFC North easily.
Yeah.
And on top of that, I just think defensively alone, I think Minter's going to do enough to get them like a top 3 defense. I mean, because we've seen back-to-back years where
Yes.
off this talent alone and off this top-end guys alone, even though they're starting the season off bad defensively with Zach Orr being a trash D coordinator, you see stretches the second half of the season where they're like a top 5, top 3 defense. And I think bringing in Minter, I think they're going to be an elite defense all throughout the year. I think they're going to draft really well, and I just think them having a new face in the facility is going to help them a lot.
Yeah, I think this first round pick will do a lot for me as far as the direction of this team and my hope for them next season. They could be a team for Jordan Tyson. I keep saying it, but that's who I've had Jordan Tyson going to in the last 2 mock drafts over on the channel because he's going to fall because of his medicals. And to get a guy that it could be by far and away the best receiver in the class, a true number 1 next to Zay Flowers, next to Mark Andrews, all of a sudden you got something to be excited about there for Lamar Jackson. But I'll leave it at that. Next up, we have the Houston Texans, who I was this close to having a little bit higher, as well as the LA Chargers, who I was even closer to having in the next tier. For the Houston Texans, Amir, I had them as a winner because you bring in Reed Blankenship to shore up the back end, and you re-signed pretty much a lot of your great players that were set to hit the market. Daniel Hunter, Dalton Schultz, Trent Brown there on the offensive line, and you also traded for David Montgomery, which they get some brownie points there because I love myself some David Montgomery. Outside of losing Joe Mixon, who didn't want to play there, and he didn't play there all of last season, we still don't know what's going on with him. And then you traded away Titus Howard, a tackle who you benched at the end of last season to the Cleveland Browns. For the Texans, look, there's questions around CJ Stroud. Do I think he's as bad as what he showed in the playoffs last year? No. Let's please remember he didn't have Nico Collins in that game, and his starting tight end went out. So all of his offensive pieces that he was set to have in that game were they either didn't show up like Joe Mixon or they got hurt like Nico and Dalton Schultz. They have such an elite defense. I think they're going to cruise to win this division. I think Jacksonville will take a little bit of a step back. So I think Houston, it's their division to lose. And given the fact that I think they're going to cruise, they could have a pretty high seed. So home field paired with the momentum they could have, Houston, I really like their offseason to this point. And then we'll talk about the Chargers. Amir, you have Jim Harbaugh, and yes, you lost Jesse Minter, so I want to see how this defense reacts and responds. But as far as what they've done, they brought in Biadasz there, one of the most underrated centers in free agency. You brought in Charlie Kolar, you re-signed Khalil Mack, Trevor Penning for some offensive line depth, and you also brought in a couple defensive linemen. I think as far as depth, it is night and day better on this roster. I want to see what they do in the draft, but this could be the roster, the year for Justin Herbert to answer the call. Your thoughts on these two teams?
I think the more interesting team is the Chargers. I have no idea where to put them at. I'm being completely honest. I had them in competitive. I had them in the bubble. I was kind of wrestling back and forth. I have no idea. I think they got better in free agency, but I could just see them hitting just like a dead spot where they're just consistently just here. And it's like I don't really know what their ceiling is as a team. Like I know for at least Houston, I know at least Houston's defense is probably going to be the best in the league again. I mean, they're going to
Yeah.
be dominant, even if Stroud plays bad. I mean, I know they're at least going to be in competitive games. I mean, they at least made that game against New England competitive, and Stroud turned the ball over what like 6 times.
Yeah.
And you know, going into this season, I mean, at least for Houston, Woody Marks is in year two. He's extremely underrated. He's really good. Montgomery, like you just brought up, he's great. Schultz is good. Nico Collins is good. Tank Dell, he has some major questions, but maybe
Jaden
he'll be
Higgins,
solid coming
forgot to
back.
mention him. Love Jaden Higgins.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Higgins as well, extremely underrated. And so I think for Houston, just off defensively alone, because the one thing we know is that defense travels, and they've
Yeah.
only gotten better on defense. And so I think I'm not going to say the AFC South is for them to lose 100%. I think it's crazy. I think Jacksonville's going to win this division, but not by much. I think it's going to be really close. But I think for the Chargers, the biggest thing I really want to see is I want the defense to still get even better. I mean, even last season, Minter was a great D coordinator, but you kind of saw stretches where the secondary, they absolutely struggled at times. And so I just want to see more consistency from them. Also, too, the injuries, man. Like, if they get plagued by injuries
Yes.
again, they could be screwed big time.
And look, it might sound absolutely crazy, and the Chargers might be one of the only teams I'll say this for. Might be the first time I've ever said this, but the reason I think they could be Super Bowl contenders is because of their tackles alone. With Rashawn Slater, who didn't play at all last season, is an all-pro tackle. Joe Alt was on his way to being a unanimous all-pro tackle last season, and with only Joe Alt on the field last year, Amir, they were one of the
Yeah.
best teams in the AFC. Period. They were a couple game lead on this division at one point. I think with both of those guys back and you're improving the interior of this offensive line, I think you can score a lot more this year. And you know Herbert doesn't really turn the ball over. So as long
Mhm.
as Jim Harbaugh can get this defense, he can get enough out of them, a league average group. I do think the Chargers can take that step. But the tackles, man, that's by far and away the best duo in the league. Both those guys could be all pros next season, and I wouldn't be shocked. The next group of teams, we have teams in all of the same divisions. As far as the AFC West, we have the Kansas City Chiefs. They have had an interesting offseason. They've lost a lot. Two of their starting corners. They did bring in Kenneth Walker and they re signed Travis Kelsey, but you have lost a lot. Brian Cook in that secondary as well. Your both of your starting running backs. So I want to see how they shore up this roster, but I do know that they have two first round picks, which is a first in the Andy Reid era, and I want to see how they use them. So I want to see how they finish off this offseason. I am worried about whether or not Mahomes will be ready from day number one. Regardless, the Chiefs are the Chiefs. I think they bounce back in a big way. The Jaguars. This is a big year for me. Last year, of course, shocked us all. We all knew they would take a step in the right direction, but the step and how much of a jump it was shocked at least me. To win 14 games, to have one of the top three defenses, it was a year that I wasn't expecting from this team. But Trevor Lawrence, I think, solidified himself as the franchise guy. If there were any more questions, they're now done. You did lose Travis Etienne, but that's really the only big piece you lost. I, it's not that I can't see this team returning to the top of the mountain, but now that Liam Cohen is out there, it's like the quarterback theory, Amir. When these young quarterbacks go out there and they dominate from year one, and then the year two they struggle, it's because teams have tape on them. They know what they like to do. They know what how they succeed. They know what bothers them. I want to see how this team plays in year number two under Liam Cohen now that teams know him, if that makes any sense. So I'll leave the Jags there. Hopefully you'll touch on that. And then the Bengals, I mean, they're going to put up 30 points. They're going to give up 35. That's really the thing. They added Boye Mafe, but they lost two edge rushers. This is a team that is going to follow the same script, Amir. They're going to start slow. They're going to have some injuries, and then they're going to make a late playoff push. Maybe they get there, maybe they don't. Your thoughts on these bottom three?
Everything you said about Cincy, I completely agree. I think offensively alone, the firepower that they have, I think they'll make games competitive. I think they're going to have like a top three offense in the league, maybe even the highest rated offense in the league. They're going to get blown out some games. They're going to be in shootout some games. I think they'll make the playoffs, but the defense is still going to be trash. The reason why I haven't been the competitive teams is because I'm kind of playing my chances here. Like, there's no way they'll have a bottom three defense for the third year in a row. I'm having at least some optimism that they'll at least be the slightest bit better, and that's
To
really
cut
all they
you off,
need to
though,
really
to
get
cut you
teams
off,
struggling.
they lost both of their starting edge rushers and they replaced them with one. Sure, they added Brian Cook on the back end. I do you really think that bringing in Boye Mafe is going to transform this defense that much?
Really, I just think Al Golden will at least make
You
them
think he's okay?
at
I
least,
see. I mean, they were a young unit. I'll
yeah,
leave it at
at
that.
least. I mean, because I mean, like the biggest thing is if they could just at least create turnovers and just at least get stops and Burrow can stay healthy, I just think offensively alone, how dominant they are on offensively, I think they can at least just make games hard for teams. Like I think the AFC is wide open. They could sneak in with like 10 wins, and I think if they're on the road and they're playing a team like Houston, they can score on Houston. Like
Yeah.
I mean seriously, I mean like they can score on any defense they play. And so I have them in the competitive tier for the Jags. You brought up a great point you know, with the quarterback theory, when teams do get tape, it's a bit concerning. But the biggest thing that was really impressive for me last season was how dominant that run defense was. I mean, that run defense was dominant.
Yes.
Next year, you're now getting a season where Travis Hunter, he's playing full time corner. He could be like a legit Pro Bowl lockdown corner, in my opinion. And I just think they also similar in that Chicago run where they set the foundation where I just think they have a brand new coach there, Parker Washington. He was really underrated last year, really
Yes.
good.
Yes.
Brian Thomas, hopefully he doesn't have that nonsense going on beginning of the season. He's going to come out firing this season. And I just think they're in a perfect spot where they can start off hot, really, really hot.
Yeah. Any thoughts on the Chiefs before we move on?
Not really, I think for Kansas City, I mean, the biggest thing is drafting really good and installing time, until Mahomes get back. Like, I think if they start the season off like 0-3, 0-4, and it doesn't look like it's going in a positive direction, I wouldn't be opposed if they just kind of held out on throwing Mahomes back out there, honestly.
Let's move on. NFC competitive playoff teams. A similar story here where we think they can at least win one playoff game, but potentially a lot more. Amir, you're a lot higher on San Francisco than I am. I have them as a bubble team. I'm worried about George Kittle, his injury, how long that will linger into the season, and if he even does return, is he ever going to be, that top three tight end again? Not that he can't, but again, coming off of a serious injury like that, it's going to take some time. Um, Sell me on San Francisco. We also have Philly here, where Philly new offensive coordinator for the 18th year in a row. They lost pieces a lot on the defensive end of the field. They re-signed Jordan Davis, brought in Tariq Woolen. Philly's going to be Philly. They're going to compete for this division. But sell me on San Francisco and why you have them as a Super Bowl contender at this point in the offseason.
Well, the biggest thing, I trust Kyle Shanahan. And this offense is going to be flat out dominant, right?
You can really end
Purdy,
your statement
Christian
there. I
McCaffrey.
trust Kyle Shanahan, maybe the best coach in the game.
I mean, I mean, seriously. I mean, it's been every year where you look at the roster and they've exceeded expectations. I mean, last year through all the injuries, I mean, they brought back Mac Jones, and it's like they won some big time games with Purdy out, and it's like once they got Purdy back, we were strongly considering, if a -7.5 spread against Seattle on the road was too much of a spread, and Seattle dominated them. But when I'm looking at offensively, right, Mike Evans, even if he's 75% of prime Mike Evans. That's still a great talent you put on the field.
Yeah.
You bring in Christian Kirk. He's a good piece. DeMarcus Robinson, he's back. I think Jake Tonjes, I think he's even a solid tight end to where he can at least get it done. And I
Hey,
just think
Ricky
offensively
Pearsall,
alone, they're
the GOAT.
exactly. I mean, I completely forgot about Pearsall as well. I mean, Pearsall should have a third year, somewhere breakout year. I even think Isaac Guerrero is a
Yeah.
solid backup
Yes.
running back.
Freak.
And I mean, even and it's like defensively, you go ahead, you bring back in Dre Greenlaw. If he's at least decent, that's going to really help them a lot. Fred Warner's going to be back. And the biggest question was the secondary was extremely young. But I think guys like Malik Mustafa, I think he's really, really good. Upton Stout is also really, really solid. Ronaldo Green can be solid. And Diamond Lenore, they just have to bring in a D coordinator that can at least just be a great player motivator and just bring the most out of these young guys. And I think they're contenders.
And that is the only concern for me. They have the talent and they have the superstar talent, like you mentioned there with Nick Bosa and of course Fred Warner, maybe the best linebacker. Scratch that, the best linebacker in the game today. Um, and that can really be again that can cover a lot of defensive flaws. But I want to see how they close off the offseason before I put them in that contention tier. But speaking about great coaches, two NFC North teams that have coaches that have elevated their rosters in huge ways. For the Packers, I just look, they lost Romeo Dubs, Rashawn Gary, Quay Walker, Malik Willis, Elton Jenkins. They've had five longtime veterans and starters, Amir, outside of Malik Willis, leave this offseason. So there's going to be a bit of a culture shock and a lot more opportunity in this locker room that I'm going to be waiting to see who takes advantage of it. But this is a great coaching staff under Matt LaFleur. They have, in my opinion, a top 10 quarterback in Jordan Love. This is going to be a very solid 9, 10, 11 win football team like they've been every single season. To me, they're the new Pittsburgh Steelers, Amir. They're always going to be in the mix, but unless they make that big time move, which Green Bay really never does, which I guess is kind of critical because they brought in Micah Parsons. I don't see them making that deep playoff run. So I have them as just making the playoffs. I'm sure they can win at least one game, but they got to prove to me that they are not just going to be the seventh seed yet again, tailing off towards the end of the season. Amir, your thoughts on Green Bay, and then maybe transition into Minnesota?
I think Green Bay misses the playoffs this year. I think they do. But
Very,
I
very
agree
good
with you.
possibility.
Yeah. And like they're going to be in that 8 to 9 win range, in my opinion. I just think they're in a position where I think the defense is going to get worse, specifically the secondary, right? Halfway left. I think that's a big concern. Guys like Keyshawn Nixon, he did not look good throughout last season. And it's like, I mean, I think they brought in Say Just,
Yes.
which,
Mhm.
he has a lot of questions. And that concerns me big time where you bring in not only an even worse secondary the year before, but you also bring in a whole new D coordinator. That's extremely scary. And offensively, it's like this thing where I don't know why LaFleur, and I think he's a great coach. I don't know why they're so obsessed with having like a committee wide receiver core. Like I don't understand why. And it's like we just asked these same questions when Rodgers was playing quarterback for Green Bay. Was outside of Devontae Adams, they had just a consistent receiving core of just wide receiver threes and this like solid route runners. But it's like you need more firepower, and like I'm concerned about them. And even last season and the year before, they're so heavily reliant on Josh Jacobs, where it's like if he's out, if he's hurt at all, this offense is so stagnant where I'm extremely concerned. I think it's a situation where they can't just rely on Josh Jacobs again, or
Yeah.
else this team is going to go downhill.
Yeah. And then of course their division rival, similar questions. Um, this is a team in the Minnesota Vikings that 2 years ago, what they win? 14 games.
Mm,
Somehow, some way, with 14 wins, they weren't able to host the playoff game. But then last year, they allowed, they let Sam Darnold walk. They allowed their former first round pick in JJ McCarthy to run the show. Of course, he started off great with that crazy comeback win, and then it went downhill. Then he gets hurt. Then he comes back and he's inconsistent. So much so that the Minnesota Vikings decided we're giving up on him. I know they said that they're going to allow him to compete, but you don't go out
he's
there and
not
sign
starting.
Kyler Murray and tell your
Mm,
former top 10 pick that he's still going to run the show. Kyler Murray is now the quarterback of the Minnesota Vikings. I don't think he's a great scheme fit there for Kevin O'Connell, but what I do know is that he's 100 times more talented than JJ McCarthy. He adds a different element. I think it's going to be fun to see how those two work together. But I can tell you one thing, Amir, this offseason, and especially because you're higher on them than me, I think if they're going to be this competitive playoff team, I can tell you who's the happiest person in the world. It's Justin Jefferson because he can finally be that dominant all pro wide receiver yet again if he has a quarterback that can get him the
Yeah.
football, which Kyler Murray has always done, whether if it was Hopkins, Marvin Harrison, Michael Wilson. He always gets his top guys the football. Trey McBride as well. I think Jordan Addison, Hawkinson, Jefferson, they're going to be very happy with K1 winning the job. Amir, you know, I've been on that K1 bandwagon
Yeah.
for a pretty long
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. I mean, it might sound crazy, but I'm saying it now. I think they can legitimately win this division. I think they're going to make a legit push. I think it's going to come down to the last week or two. I think they're going to finish at least second. I think I said Detroit and Green Bay, they're gonna, fight for that fourth spot. But I think Minnesota, people are gonna finally start to respect Kevin O'Connell. And me and you, we both have been high on him. We both think he's a great coach. And last year, I mean, they won what 8, 9 games with Max Brosmer and freaking JJ McCarthy playing like
Yes.
the worst two quarterbacks in the league, and they were still winning games. I mean, their defense is still loaded. The defense is still good. They still force a lot of turnovers, and so I think with Kevin O'Connell and Flores both on the team, offensively, the offense is still loaded. I think they're going to legitimately make a push to win this division.
No doubt about it. Again, I can't wait to revisit that conversation later on. Of course, you know I'm going to go with the Bears, but number two, I think I might roll with K1 there and the Vikings. But this division, I mean, the Bears are going to be fun to watch, and then they got two of my favorite quarterbacks in that division, as well as the Lions. NFC North is going to be fun to watch. Now we're going to look at teams on the bubble, teams that we think can be that 8, 9, 10 win football team, potentially make or miss the playoffs in that last week of the season. But ultimately, we don't really think these teams are Super Bowl contenders or really super dark horse contenders. I'll leave it at that. You have the New England Patriots, the reigning AFC champions, the Pittsburgh Steelers there with Mike McCarthy, potentially Aaron Rodgers, and they had one of the best off seasons in my opinion. Then you have Cam Ward and the Tennessee Titans with Brian Daboll, with Robert Saleh coming in. They had a great offseason bringing in guys like John Franklin Myers, Alante Taylor, Wandale Robinson. Tennessee in a wide open division can make some noise. Then you also have potentially Fernando Mendoza and the Las Vegas Raiders. As of course, Tom Brady, he's a part-time owner of this team. He really put his foot in the door, and this team is trusting him as well as the new coaching staff under Clint Kubiak. With Tyler Linderbaum coming in, Kwity Paye, Nakobe Dean, Quay Walker, hey, heck, even Jalen Naylor coming in. They've had a tremendous offseason, and they retain Max Crosby. Amir, dive into one of these teams, and we'll go from there.
I mean, the Titans are in a perfect spot to win like 7, 8 games at least. I think they're in a spot where, and we keep bringing it up. Brian Daboll, he's a good offensive mastermind, a great QB developer, and people that don't really understand his history of coaching up Josh Allen. I think you see with Jackson Dart and Daniel Jones. I mean, he's made 3 quarterbacks where they do have different play styles than Cam Ward, but I mean, shoot, I'll say this now. Cam Ward has better arm talent than Daniel Jones and Jackson Dart. And he had
By
those
far.
two guys look like great throwers. I mean, seriously. And so I think now it's at a standpoint where they bring in not only great offensive pieces to boost up their firepower, but Cam Ward, he had a year under his belt. And the biggest thing I love about Cam Ward is a lot of times you kind of see the confidence of these quarterbacks ruin, but you didn't really see his confidence kind of waver throughout the season. You saw them be trash, you saw them struggle, and you saw them be a dumpster fire. But I think he's one of those guys where him struggling his first year doesn't really matter. I think he's going to attack this offseason great. They spent a bunch of money on assets. I think the defense with Robert Saleh as the head coach is going to be amazing. And I mean, to be like quite frankly, Robert Saleh got absolutely screwed over in New York. I don't think anybody was saving the New York franchise, but I think now he's in a perfect spot to really coach this team up. I think they're going to be great.
Before you move on, Amir, I want to throw this quick question out to you. And then I will tell you what I did for the Titans. They have the number 4 pick. If you are Robert Saleh, if you are Brian Daboll, heck, and this GM, where would you go with that number 4 pick? Would you go with like an edge rusher like a Reuben Bain? Would you go with like an Arvell Reese? Or would you go on offense, get Cam Ward a number 1 wide receiver, and a Carnell Tate, a Jordan Tyson, or heck, just swing for the fences and get Jeremiah Love? What kind of direction would you go? Would you just continue to build up this defensive front or give Cam Ward some help?
I think, you know, realistically, initially, I would think they would attack their secondary. Like I would not be surprised if they go get like a Mansour Delane or like a Caleb Downs and boost up that secondary. Like honestly, I would lean in that direction. If not, I don't know if Carnell Tate is really worth a fourth, the fourth overall pick. I think if they're so set on getting a receiver, they're better off just trading back. Like maybe like two spots and then possibly getting like Jordan Tyson because he's gonna fall. But if I'm them, I would just take a shot at Caleb Downs personally. Like I think you give Caleb Downs Robert Saleh, I think that'll help him a lot.
Where do you think I went with that fourth pick?
So I'm not sure.
I gave him Jeremiah Love.
Hmm.
I said you have a defensive coach, um, Robert Saleh running the show. We all know defensive coaches like to protect the football and rely on their defense. And with a team that doesn't have a great running game, we know they don't have great
Yeah.
wide receivers, right? They don't have that true number one. I know Calvin Ridley is coming back. Outside of that, you have younger guys like Alec Manor. Of course, you're bringing Wandale Robinson. They don't really have that big play wide receiver threat. But I do think getting a big play, potentially generational running back, in Jeremiah Love, that is your bell cow. That is the ultimate safety blanket for Cam Ward, a guy that can just be a guy that can touch the ball 25 to 30 times a game, and then that can open up the Wandales down the field, the Alec Manors, the Chamir DKs, the Ridleys to make some surprising plays. Your thoughts on Jeremiah Love at number 4 to Tennessee?
I don't think that's a crazy pick. And I mean, we sit here and we question where running backs go high. And I'm not a big fan of drafting running backs high, but I think a guy where Jeremiah Love, I think his floor is going to be a Pro Bowler. Like,
Yeah,
seriously, I think there's two guys in this draft whose floors are Pro Bowlers. And I think that's Jeremiah Love and Caleb Downs. I think if you draft Jeremiah Love, you're not only getting a generational running back, but you're also getting somebody that literally fits perfectly with the need for this team. And we know Brian Daboll loves to run the football. And so I don't think that's a crazy pick at all.
Just to quickly fly through the other teams, there's going to be big questions around New England, why we have them this low. You can add in as you may, but I will say this. Um, Look, they didn't really do
Yeah.
anything to move the needle this offseason. You have a young quarterback, you have cap space. Let's capitalize on that. They didn't really do anything. I am one of the biggest Drake May fans you will find, but I don't think they've done anything to elevate this roster. And they're also going to have the first place schedule next season. So, unlike Buffalo, Miami, the Jets, the Patriots are going to be playing the top end teams around the league next year. And I just don't know if they can replicate the magic from this year to next year, at least not 13, 14 wins. I can easily see them sliding back to 10, 9 wins, still making the playoffs, maybe winning a game. But I can't see them winning this conference yet again. Pretty far from it. Amir, your thoughts on them as the other two teams are kind of self-explanatory.
Yeah, man, I think I agree with everything you just said. I think this is a perfect spot for them to fall into a Super Bowl slump. And it might sound crazy, but they haven't gotten much better. Last year, similar to, I'm not going to say similar to Seattle, because Seattle, like, they have legit pieces on both sides of the ball. But I think for New England, they also exceeded expectations. They kind of benefited off of teams being injured, off of them having an easy schedule, and them just catching teams slacking. But I think a situation where the offense looked flat out garbage throughout the playoffs, the defense looked really, really good, but they haven't done anything to really make themselves better, right? Diggs is a free agent. So now you go into a year with the run game still having some questions. Like the run game wasn't as dominant as it should have been last season. And then now you're going to a season where it's only Drake May, Kayshawn Booty, and that's really it. And so that's
Romeo
extremely
Dubs.
concerning for me. I mean, Romeo does, but I mean, this is also a situation where it's another committee receiving core, and
Yeah.
it doesn't move me much. And now they're going into a year where I think the Bills are going to be better. The whole entire league is coming out to get them. I mean, a team like the Bengals, the Ravens, these are teams that are going to make legit playoff pushes, and even a team like the Broncos, I think they're going to be better. I think the Jags are going to come out hot, and I think they're in a position where they could legitimately just take a huge backslide.
Let's move on to the NFC side of things, and we're gonna have a couple interesting takes here. Amir, I'm gonna need you to sell me on Carolina, but we'll get there in a moment because I'm gonna try and sell you on Washington. This is a Washington team that 2 years ago shocked the world. Am I right? You drafted a quarterback, what, second or third overall in Jaden Daniels, and then you went from a team that was projected 6 wins to being a game away from making the Super Bowl as they had so many upset wins along the way. and Jaden Daniels was playing like a top five quarterback that season. Last year, there were injuries. There was a lot of great mojo around the team, and they ultimately kind of lost the season before they could even find it. This team, for this offseason, to still be aggressive and to go get Odafe Owe, Kaylavon Chason, two guys, edge rushers that fill a big void, they're both coming off of career seasons. You brought in Emick Robertson to be an outside boundary corner. You also re signed your franchise left tackle in Laramie Tunsil. Outside of losing your starting center, which you can replace in this upcoming draft, I think this team is out to prove something. And maybe I'm just blinded by his rookie season, but I do think Jaden Daniels is a top 5, 6, 7 quarterback in the league. And I think he's going to prove it again this season. I do want to see them add an offensive weapon, but at pick 7, they can still add a Caleb Downs or a Sonny Styles to add to this Dan Quinn defense. This defense could be more dominant than ever in the Dan Quinn era, and I will leave it at that. So a returning great quarterback, a defense better than ever, I think is a recipe for success. So I actually had them as a competitive playoff team. Amir, your thoughts on Washington?
I think I think last season, right? It wasn't really on Jaden Daniels, right? It was around him as the defense was bad, the offensive line was bad, the injuries were bad. I think this is a year where he's going to bounce back, but I just don't think it'll equate to winning. Like I just don't think it will. And I think, and I love Dan Quinn, but they still have a lot of questions on defense. The secondary is still trash. The O line still isn't going to be that good. The only bright spot you have is Jaden Daniels and I guess the running back depth. But it's like even then, I mean Terry McLaurin, I could see a situation where he could force himself out because if I was him, I wouldn't want to still be in Washington personally. And I think Dallas is going to be better next year. I think the Eagles, I could see them taking a step back, but I still think they're going to be good enough to still sweep them in a regular season series. And I just don't see them making the playoffs. I see them on that 6 to 7 win range, in my opinion.
Wow. Big difference there. But now I want you to sell me on Carolina. Carolina is a team
And
that I
so
actually had as one of my offseason winners. For them to bring in Jalen Phillips, Devin Lloyd, two guys that can transform that defense and for Carolina standards be a lot better than what they've been in the Dave Canales era. They didn't lose anything outside of Cade Mays, which was their starting center. I love their offseason. They kept it simple, but it was effective. Sell me on why you have Carolina as a playoff, a competitive playoff team, because I am not there at all. Sell me on Carolina.
I think this is a team where, and we keep on bringing it up, it's in that same role of Jacksonville, of Chicago. I think Canales has set a new foundation for this franchise. And you just brought it up. Those are my two biggest things bringing in Jalen Phillips and Devin Lloyd. I think this is a situation where the defense, I mean, we watched this secondary. No other secondary has given the Rams more trouble than Carolina last season. And I think it's going to be the same thing going into this year where defensively they're going to be really, really elite. We know they have guys in the secondary that can cover. The front seven just now got a lot better. And offensively, Dave Canales is a great offensive mastermind. And now you got a guy like Ted McMillan going into his second year. And I know AJ Dillon hasn't really played the past 2 years due to injury, but even him being able to be a backup running back and be this a workhorse, I think it'll be great. And I also think them bringing in John Mechie for at least being a serviceable, wide receiver 3, I think that's going to be good enough. And I could see them, picking up like a receiver in this draft or even going after another running back in this draft and boosting up his offense.
Yeah, Carolina's an interesting draft team. I had them going with Peter Woods, interior defensive lineman there to continue to build this front. It's a division that loves to run the football. I mean, the Saints have two great running backs now. You have, of course, Atlanta. That's going to be their identity there under Stefanski. And Tampa Bay might lean more into the run this season with the loss of Mike Evans. So to get Peter Woods, I think could transform that defensive line with Devin Lloyd, one of the leaders of Jacksonville's amazing run defense last year. Jalen Phillips can also help in the pass game as well to get after the quarterbacks and generate some turnovers. For what it means, I have them the highest rated out of this division, even though they're going to be having a first place schedule. I'm not sold on anybody in this division making it out of the first round, but I could be proven wrong, and I actually welcome that because to see a city and a team like Carolina get back to where they once were, that's always a good sight as a general NFL fan. For Dallas, they kept it simple. They brought everybody back. They brought in Jalen Thompson on the back end. You re-signed Brandon Aubrey, of course, big move there. I honestly think Dallas has a very solid roster. They could win this division next year. For Detroit, this is a team that last year took a big step back. We looked at them to be Super Bowl contenders. They were anything but that. And this offseason, they've lost a lot. Amick Robertson, Alex
Yeah,
Anzalone, a
man.
guy that's been a staple for Dan Campbell's defense. They lost Knuckles and David Montgomery. And all you did was brought in Cade Mays and Isaiah Pacheco, and nothing is moving the needle for me. I think just based on culture alone and talent alone, I can see career years out of Amon Ra and Jameer Gibbs and Jared Goff. I think the offense will carry this team to an 8-9 win season, but I really can't see them getting out of the first round. And finally, for the New York Giants, just like Tennessee, they're a very intriguing team because last year we saw flashes. Now John Harbaugh comes in, a Hall of Fame, first ballot Hall of Fame coach, comes in to run the show, and he's already left his mark. Outside of losing Wandale Robinson, which I'm a lot higher on him than most people, you bring in Isaiah Likely, Tremont Edmonds, the All-Pro Hall of Famer Greg Newsome. Um, they have a very high draft pick. I think number 5 overall, so they can add a Caleb Downs, they can add a receiver. They have a lot of different routes to go. But if John Harbaugh can get Jackson Dart to that next level with this dominant defensive front, I see no reason why they can't take that jump to the playoffs. Amir, I had them going Sonny Styles to complete the front 7. Your thoughts on New York, and then you can go from there.
New York is extremely interesting. I think if Downs doesn't go fourth, he's going fifth. I think this would be perfect for him to fall right in New York. We know Harbaugh loves defense. He's a defensive minded coach, right? Offensively, they're honestly not in a bad spot offensively too. Scatterbo should be back. I think Tyron Tracy is extremely underrated. The O line has a little bit of questions, but I mean, as far as the wide receiver core, I mean, you lose Robinson, but it's like the neighbor should be back healthy, and this is a spot where I think just youth. And also last year, I think they had enough bright spots to where you can have at least some optimism going into this season. And I just think Harbaugh, I think they're right on that bubble tier as well. I can see a situation where they could surprisingly just shock a bunch of teams. And let's say if the NFC West is, or if the NFC East is happen to be trash, I can see them sneaking in as like a fourth seed, winning like 9 games. I could see it.
Yeah, I mean, don't forget they're gonna have a last place schedule. They were the worst team in this division, and they're gonna be playing a lot easier teams compared to many around the league. So they're gonna have a last place schedule. Like you mentioned, they have a lot of youth. They have a new coach, right? A new voice at the top of the snake, and this team could look a lot different next season. Hopefully, John Harbaugh can get that defense at a top 5 level. Now we want to look at teams that are meh or underwhelming, teams that we think they could be that 5, 6, 7, maybe 8 win tier teams, but teams that are gonna potentially shock some around the league, right? Cause some upsets because they have either good coaching or just a lot of talent, but ultimately they're never taken too seriously, and they're not going to have a top 5 pick at the end of the season. We both have 3 of the teams in the NFC South with the Tampa Bay Bucks, the Atlanta Falcons, and the New Orleans Saints. Those teams have made some interesting moves. The Indianapolis Colts, a team that was 8-1 to start last season, but of course they've had some injuries to Daniel Jones. He's probably not going to play at all next season. And as far as their offseason goes, let me just take a quick look because they haven't done anything that's really led me to believe they're going to take that next step. They lost Zaire Franklin, Kwity Paye, 2 key longtime starters on the defense. They also traded away Michael Pittman. You did re-sign Alec Pierce to the biggest deal as far as a receiver in free agency history. I'm not sure if he's worth that much money. And you brought in Arden Key. I just don't see it for Indy this year. It's a shame that we're going to have another wasted year of Jonathan Taylor, but I think they resort back to what they were before the magical start of last year. And then finally, the Cleveland Browns. It's the Todd Monken, Shador Sanders show there in Cleveland. We brought in Zion Johnson, Titus Howard, Elton Jenkins, Quincy Williams on the defensive end of the field, but we lost David Njoku, our entire offensive line, Devin Bush as well. This is a team that's going to have the same song and dance. We're going to be carried by the defense, and hopefully offensively, there's some flashes to be excited about. Amir, any thoughts on any of these teams before we move on?
For the Colts, it's going to be another wasted year. of Shane Steichen and JT, and it's sad. I think what really screwed them over was them trading for Sauce and giving away 2 first-round picks. Right. I think Sauce adds some depth, adds some talent to the secondary, which they haven't had in a long time. I think them getting Cam Taylor-Britt will help them a bit. And John Owens also extremely underrated, but this team still doesn't really move me much. And I think, honestly, I think if Steichen gets this team 9 wins, it's in my opinion, they can leave that season happy, honestly. And I think for New Orleans, they're in the right direction, but they're still a couple years away from really impressing me. Nothing really moves them for me at all, really going into this season. And for the Browns, I 1,000% agree with you. It's going to be another year where the defense is going to be really good. They're going to carry us through games. The games are going to be tight. But us not really having enough talent on offense is going to sell us short. So,
Yeah. I do want to say for the Atlanta Falcons, you, Kevin Stefanski brings in another lefty Hawaiian quarterback. Amir, I don't know what his obsession is with lefty quarterbacks and deep
yeah.
quarterback rooms. But I mean, hey, they have a quarterback with no knees in Michael Penix. They have a quarterback who is one concussion away from retiring in Tua. And they're paying $35 million to the quarterback that's going to watch both of those guys I just mentioned in Kirk Cousins. So Stefanski is being Stefanski, and Atlanta fans, prepare yourself for an underwhelming season. And Tampa Bay, I love you, Baker, but not this year. Now we're going to go into the bottom three teams that we see getting the number one overall pick, or at least being in that conversation. We have Malik Willis now running the show in Miami. They're a mess, right? They brought in the defensive coordinator from Green Bay to run the show as the new head coach. It's clearly a reset year. They some of their most expensive contracts are players that are not even going to suit up for them this season. Guys like Bradley Chubb, Tyreek Hill, Tua Tagovailoa, Minka Fitzpatrick. These are guys that are not suiting up for them this season, and they're paying a boatload of money too. They just traded away Jalen Waddle. Amir, how pissed would you be if you're Malik Willis? You're promised at least to have Devon Achane and Jalen Waddle, and they just traded away your number one wide receiver.
I mean, I'm absolutely pissed. I mean, they're paying almost $180 million in dead cap. I mean, in dead money. That's absolutely crazy. And we understand that they're tanking, but it's like it gets to a point where if you're paying all these guys money, you might as well just keep some of them on a roster so they can actually
Yeah.
play and at least make the games competent. And Malik Willis, he goes from leaving Green Bay to now being in a spot where he's absolutely cooked. And I think his issue was coming into free agency and his agent they shouldn't have been demanding $25 million because now teams are scared to offer them money, and now you're in a position where on a roster that's flat out trash. You should have been okay with having another prove it year where you just get paid maybe like around 10 million, and just go ahead and just take that. Because I mean, would you rather jeopardize your career and get paid a bunch of money and play for a team like the Dolphins, or would you rather just suck it up? And I mean, if I was him, I would have been happy with going ahead and at least trying to make a push for a team like Atlanta. Like at least Atlanta had pieces. At least their defense is good. At least you got Kevin Stefanski. But it's like now you end up in a position where you're just flat out cooked. So I feel bad for him.
You know how I felt about the Malik Willis signing. I don't think he was worth $10 million, let alone the 30 he was asking for. Um,
Yeah.
I honestly, Amir, I would bet some money that he doesn't even get halfway through the season. I think Miami's going to be one of the worst teams,
Yeah.
just like they were last year, and they're probably going to say with this new coaching staff, let's at least see what we have in Quinn Ewers for a longer stretch again. So again, I don't think Malik Willis is even the starter by week 10, and I'll leave it at that. For the Jets, it's Aaron Glenn's job is on the line, and they got aggressive. They brought in veterans like
Yeah.
Joseph Asai, Minka Fitzpatrick, Demario Davis to hopefully transform this defense. Offensively, you re-signed Brees Hall, but that's pretty much it. You also brought in Tavondre Sweat, of course, younger defensive tackle there out of Texas. The Jets are an interesting team, but honestly, I could just see them being in that Arch Manning, Dante Moore tier and position to continue to build up this roster and get your quarterback in next year's class. But speaking about a great storyline, Amir, you have the Arizona Cardinals who have the number three pick in this upcoming NFL draft. They've had a decent offseason. You brought in Tyler Algier. You had some depth on the offensive and defensive line. The only piece you really lost was your safety and Jalen Thompson. But Amir, when I look at this team, I have them taking David Bailey at number three overall. And whether if you want to go Bailey, whether if you want to go with Ruben Bain, getting a defensive lineman here, I think makes a lot of sense. Because you add him next to Josh Sweat, who had 12 and a half sacks last year. Walter Nolan, I'm the biggest fan on the earth of Walter Nolan. He should return and hopefully start to show his potential. But if you want to talk about storylines, Amir, who is their number one wide receiver right now?
I mean, right now, it should be Mark, but it's Michael Wilson.
Okay, on paper, it's Marvin Harrison, right?
Right, yeah.
His dad, who did his dad play with for many years?
Peyton Manning.
Okay, well, who's going to be the number one quarterback in this year's class? Arch Manning. Tell me that's not a storyline
Yeah.
that they're going to say the script was written many years ago. So Arch Manning could potentially fulfill this prophecy if he has a great year at Texas there with Sark. Could go in, be the number one pick, play for the Arizona Cardinals, who are clearly not trying to win football games this year, and teammate with and team up with the son of his dad in Marvin Harrison Jr. That could be a great situation. I mean, to come in with, at that point, Trey Benson, Trey McBride, Michael Wilson, Marvin Harrison, a defense that should be a lot better if they use this upcoming draft correctly. I'm not saying Arizona is going to be a top tier team, but I think that is definitely the blueprint that they're looking at for the future. Amir, any thoughts on the Jets and or the Arizona Cardinals?
Yeah, I would say for Arizona, if I was the Arizona fan, I'll be a bit optimistic. I'll be a bit optimistic being a fan of Arizona than a team like Cleveland personally. I just think for Arizona, they have a roster makeup now where this is a great foundation to build off of. I think the issue for Cleveland is like we have a terrible culture. Our history of our franchise is terrible, but at least for Arizona, you at least have some really successful years. You at least have some legitimate Hall of Fame guys that's been on this team. And now, I mean, you just brought up a whole list of guys that proved themselves last year. And I just only reason why I have them in this tier, I think they're better than both of these teams by a wide margin. I just think this is a tank year. They kind of figure some stuff out. They kind of see, how these guys are this season. I think Brissett will make these games competitive. I think defensively they can really boost this up in the draft. And I think they go ahead and get a quarterback for next year's draft. I think they're in a great spot as a franchise.
Who do you think, if you had to bet money as of today, who do you think gets the first pick? Is it one of these three teams or a team that we have not shown yet?
I think it's 1,000% the Dolphins. I mean, the Dolphins suck so bad. And it's like, I mean, they're paying all these guys this money. I mean, I'm trying to think what's the strength of their team, like their roster. I mean, because they
I,
suck bad.
I mean, they need corner, they need everything. The
Yeah.
strength of their team might be Devon Achane, and I'll leave it at that.
I
Devon
mean, that's
Achane.
it. That's it. And I think this is going to be a situation where I could see him getting banged up and just sitting out the whole season. I mean, there's no point of putting him out there for 17 games, giving the ball over 200 times this year, and just having him just rot away and just get injured for no reason.
Yeah, I think it's definitely between the Dolphins and or the Cardinals, two teams that don't have great quarterback situations, and they're clearly not trying to win games. But that is it. The show went longer than I had thought it would, but I guess that's just what happens when you got to talk about 32 teams. Amir, sorry to keep you longer than expected, but any last thoughts? As again, the draft is around the corner. A lot can still change from now until the beginning of the season. But any thoughts about anything here?
No last thoughts.
That is going to do it. Of course, if you're new around here, drop a like, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you next week.